what if I told you the next major breakthrough in electric vehicles isn't actually a battery that charges in 5 minutes, but a car designed, like, very intentionally designed to take over half an hour to charge?
Yeah, it sounds completely backward, doesn't it?
It really does. But, looking at today's stack of sources, it feels like we are finally passing through that really awkward, highly experimental teenage phase of EVs.
Right, the early adopter phase.
Exactly. It reminds me a lot of the early days of smartphones. I mean, you remember when every new phone had to have some wild novelty just to grab your attention?
Oh yeah, the slide-out keyboard.
The physical keyboards, or, a camera that rotated on a hinge, or a screen that flipped sideways. They were insanely expensive, super complex, and mostly just built for tech nerds who wanted to show off the bleeding edge.
And then the market matured.
Right. We just stopped caring about rotating cameras. We just wanted a reliable, everyday slab of glass that, worked flawlessly, held a charge all day, and didn't require a second mortgage.
Which is exactly what automotive strategists call crossing the EV chasm.
The EV chasm. Okay, break that down for us.
So it's this notoriously difficult period for any emerging tech. Basically, you exhaust your pool of eager early adopters, the people willing to put up with severe range anxiety, glitchy software, massive premium price tag.
People who just want to own the newest gadget.
Exactly. But suddenly you run out of those buyers and you're staring down the mass market, the everyday driver.
And everyday drivers are a lot less forgiving.
They are ruthlessly pragmatic. I mean, they demand affordability, reliable range, and they absolutely refuse to contort their daily routines just to accommodate their car.
Which brings us right to the mission of today's deep dive. We are looking at a vehicle that is actively trying to build a bridge over that exact chasm.
The highly anticipated 2026 Kia EV3.
That's the one. And we have pulled from a massive, incredibly diverse pile of sources for this. We're talking global dealership routing guides from South Carolina to the UK, comprehensive telemetry and road tests from Car and Driver and Recharged, deep dive market strategy analyses, and even just raw, unfiltered consumer sentiment scraped straight from Reddit.
It's a mountain of data.
It really is. And we want to figure out if this specific vehicle is the one that finally cracks the code for you, the everyday buyer. So, looking at the sheer volume of data here, is the EV3 just like a shrunken, budget-cut version of Kia's massive EV9 SUV, or are we looking at a fundamentally different blueprint?
It is absolutely a completely different blueprint. And early market indicators suggest it is really resonating.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, before even touching the U.S. market, the EV3 moved over 75,000 units globally in its first year.
Wow, 75,000.
Yeah, and domestic South Korean sales in this category jumped like 137% year over year. When you start stripping the car down to its engineering choices, you realize it's basically a masterclass in strategic compromise.
Strategic compromise, meaning they had to give some things up.
Right. Kia designed this vehicle from the ground up to aggressively eliminate the twin barriers of mass adoption.
Which are price and range anxiety.
Exactly.
So let's start with that sticker price, because to understand why this car is pulling those kinds of sales numbers, we really have to look at its core architecture. Kia made this foundational choice to lock the starting price right around an accessible $35,000 mark.
Which is a huge deal for consumers.
It's massive. But to achieve that, the spec sheets show what looks, at least on paper, like a pretty major step backward.
You're talking about the battery voltage.
Yeah. The EV3 sits on the same dedicated electric platform as its, award-winning siblings, the EV6 and the EV9. But those bigger cars utilize an ultra-fast 800-volt electrical architecture.
And the EV3 steps down to a 400-volt system.
Right. Which naturally raised a ton of skepticism across the automotive press. And I have to admit, I kind of share that skepticism.
It's a common reaction.
I mean, you read these specs, you see a 400-volt system that takes about 31 minutes to fast charge from 10 to 80%. And when you have competitors out there pushing for 15-minute charge times to mimic a gas station visit, isn't having your voltage a huge technological downgrade?
On the surface, yeah.
Because telling an everyday driver to sit at a highway charger for half an hour feels like a major roadblock to crossing that EV chasm.
It sounds incredibly counterintuitive until you look at the underlying economics and the reality of consumer behavior. Upgrading a car to an 800-volt architecture isn't just like a quick software switch.
It's physical hardware,
Highly expensive physical components. You need advanced silicon carbide inverters to handle the thermal load, thicker insulation, entirely different power routing hardware.
which costs money.
It adds thousands of dollars to the manufacturing cost of every single vehicle.
Okay, so they basically stripped out the expensive heavy-duty plumbing to keep the base price down.
They did, but they didn't just pocket the savings. This is where the strategy really reveals itself.
Oh, interesting.
By saving capital on the charging architecture, Kia was able to afford to put significantly larger battery packs right into the floor.
Ah, so you get more range.
Exactly. They offer a 58.3 kilowatt-hour standard range and a massive 81.4 kilowatt-hour long-range pack. And that long-range battery is targeting over 300 miles of everyday driving EPA range.
Wait, and the WLTP European range is even higher, right?
Yeah, it's rated at 375 miles WLTP. Plus, you've got a front-wheel drive setup delivering 201 horsepower, 209 pound-feet of torque, and a 0 to 60 time of roughly 7.5 seconds.
Which is, frankly, totally fine for everyday commuting.
Perfectly adequate. And when you cross-reference that hardware choice with the Reddit discussions and the consumer telemetry in our sources, the logic just locks into place.
What does the data say?
It overwhelmingly shows that buyers in this compact SUV segment charge their vehicles at home overnight on a standard level 2 charger 99% of the time.
Meaning the extreme fast charging speed only actually matters on a long-distance road trip.
Right, which most people only take, what, a few times a year?
Yeah, maybe twice a year for the holidays.
Exactly. The realization here was that consumers would much rather have a highly efficient 300-plus mile range vehicle for $35,000 that they can rely on every single day than pay a massive premium for an 800-volt system just to save 15 minutes at a public charger they visit semi-annually.
Wow, okay, that reframes the whole argument. You're trading a few extra minutes at a rest stop for thousands of dollars in upfront savings.
And the peace of mind of having massive range on your daily commute.
Right, but the savings from dropping to that 400-volt battery, they kind of cascade into other areas of the car, too. I noticed the reviews from Car and Driver and Recharged are absolutely obsessed with the spatial engineering of the cabin.
Oh, the packaging. How they utilize the physical footprint of the vehicle. It's arguably the EV3's greatest technical achievement.
Yeah, one of the features that kept popping up in the technical breakdowns is this super compact, thin HVAC system.
Yes, the HVAC innovation is brilliant.
They radically shrank the heating and air conditioning unit. But how do you actually reduce the size of an HVAC system by almost 44% without just, freezing the passengers in the winter?
Well, it comes down to a really sophisticated heat pump mechanism. See, in a traditional gas car, you get free heat for the cabin from the hot engine block.
Right.
EVs don't have that. So early models used resistive heating, which is essentially blowing air over hot electrical coils like a giant hairdryer.
Which just drains the battery terribly.
It ruined winter range and required massive physical components. But the EV3 uses a system that acts more like a refrigerator in reverse.
Okay, how does that work?
It compresses refrigerant to scavenge waste heat from the battery and the electric motors, while simultaneously pulling ambient thermal energy from the outside air,
Even when it's cold outside.
even when it's freezing out. By consolidating the thermal management of the battery and the cabin into one highly efficient thermodynamic loop, they physically shrank the hardware unit tucked under the dashboard.
And the downstream effect of shrinking that hardware is what really fascinated me. Because I always try to think about this in terms of analogies, right? It's like finally taking a bulky, massive furnace out of your basement so you can build a home theater in that space.
That's a great way to look at it.
Because the HVAC unit is smaller, they were able to push the dashboard forward, gifting the front passengers an extra 6 centimeters of footwell space.
Which is huge in a compact car.
Right. It has the exterior footprint of a tiny subcompact, like 4,300 millimeters long, but the interior legroom of a mid-size SUV.
Yeah, its 2,680 millimeter wheelbase actually matches the much larger Kia Sportage.
That's crazy.
That long wheelbase, combined with the completely flat floor enabled by the electric skateboard platform, it unlocks a startling amount of utility. You get a 460-liter boot and a 25-liter frunk.
So it completely outclasses competitors in sheer volume. But the space itself is just a canvas, right? The things they actually put into that space really challenge what a car is supposed to be.
Absolutely.
You have this 120 millimeter sliding table console that extends out between the seats. There is a massive 30-inch triple panoramic digital display curving across the dashboard.
And the software backing that display is entirely new.
Yeah. They are debuting Kia's ChatGPT-powered generative AI assistant that can handle complex conversational requests. And they included vehicle-to-load technology, or V2L.
which outputs at 3.6 kilowatts.
Right, meaning the car acts as a literal mobile power bank. You can plug a laptop, a coffee maker, a projector directly into a standard outlet inside the car. But okay, I have to play the skeptic again here.
Go for it.
Are sliding tables and AI chatbots just flashy gimmicks to distract you so you don't notice you are sitting at a charger for 30 minutes?
I mean, they absolutely are a distraction, but they are a highly intentional one. And it raises a really important question about how we define utility.
What do you mean?
Well, for a century, we have viewed the automobile purely as a transportation pod. Its sole function was kinetic, moving you from point A to point B.
Right, just driving.
But by integrating V2L power, relaxation seats that recline into a zero-gravity posture, and a physical workspace, Kia is pivoting the concept of the car into a functional mobile lounge.
A mobile lounge. So the charging time ceases to be this frustrating delay.
Exactly. It becomes a designated feature of your day. You pull up to a charger, plug in, slide the table out, plug your laptop into the standard outlet, ask the AI assistant to dim the lighting and set a comfortable climate, and you work.
Or you just stream a show on that huge panoramic display.
Right. It's a paradigm shift in how a driver interacts with their vehicle when it's stationary. The 30-minute charge isn't a wait. The environment is designed to make it a feature of the workspace.
I love that idea. But, redefining the interior isn't just about throwing in high-res screens and maximizing legroom. Based on our sources, Kia is fundamentally rethinking the actual physical, tactile materials you were sitting on.
The material science in this cabin is a massive leap forward.
I saw they have this corporate strategy with 10 sustainability must-haves, and they are actively phasing out animal leather entirely. What exactly are they replacing it with?
Well, they're utilizing bioplastics derived from corn extract and sugarcane for the hard touch points like the dashboard.
Wait, corn? Really?
Yeah, corn and sugarcane. And the seating surfaces use biopolyurethane, which is a highly durable leather alternative made partly from eucalyptus extracts.
Eucalyptus. That is wild.
And they are sourcing recycled PET fabric, literally old water bottles and discarded fishing nets pulled from the ocean to weave the headliners and carpets.
Wow.
Even the factory paint processes have been overhauled to be BTX-free. They eliminated harsh chemical solvents, which drastically cuts down on factory emissions. In total, each car utilizes about 28.5 kilograms of recycled plastics.
That's incredible. And reading through the depth dive into their research and development lab, they are pushing into something called biofabrication.
Yeah, the mycelium research.
Yeah.
That is easily the most disruptive concept in their sustainability portfolio.
This completely blew my mind. They are researching how to use mycelium, which is the root structure of mushrooms, to literally grow parts of the car.
Yes.
Grow them.
If I understand the mechanism correctly from the sources, they take agricultural waste, like sawdust, inoculate it with these mushroom roots, and put it into a mold shaped like a center console table.
Exactly.
And the fungus digests the waste, acts as a biological glue, and binds it into a solid, incredibly durable, fire-resistant material. Then they bake it to stop the growth. But let me ask the obvious question. If I spill my coffee on my new center console, am I watering a plant?
You are not watering a plant, no. Though the imagery is pretty funny. Once baked, the material is entirely inert, incredibly lightweight, and soft to the touch.
Okay, good to know.
But the reason automakers are pouring millions into biofabrication isn't just to have a quirky, eco-friendly talking point. It's about fundamentally revolutionizing the global supply chain.
How so?
Think about how a traditional plastic car part is made. You extract raw petroleum from the earth, you transport it across an ocean to a refinery, you process it into plastic pellets using massive amounts of energy.
Right.
Then you ship those pellets to a molding facility, heat them up again, and finally ship the finished console to the assembly plant. It is a carbon-intensive, highly fragile, global web.
And with biofabrication.
You completely bypass the petroleum industry. You can take local agricultural waste from farms right down the road from your car factory, put it in a mold, and grow the part on site. Zero waste manufacturing process.
It's localized biological manufacturing. But how does that play into consumer psychology? I mean, if you tell a buyer who is dropping $35,000 on a new vehicle that they are sitting on recycled fishing nets, eucalyptus leaves, and baked mushroom roots, do they feel like they are driving a premium vehicle, or does it feel like a cheap high school science experiment?
Well, the tactile feel of these materials is practically indistinguishable from premium synthetics. But more importantly, market metrics indicate that the definition of luxury is rapidly evolving.
Evolving how?
For modern consumers, particularly the demographic adopting EVs, sustainability itself is the new luxury. Status is no longer purely about excess or exotic animal hides. It's about intention, innovation, and environmental impact. Buyers actively want the narrative of ethical consumption.
Provided the durability and aesthetics aren't compromised, of course.
Exactly.
So we have this affordable, fast enough charging, incredibly spacious, mushroom-lined lounge on wheels. But none of that engineering brilliance matters if the geopolitical pricing strategy fails.
That's the real test.
Right, because you can engineer the perfect car, but if the price skyrockets due to tariffs and shifting tax laws the moment it crosses the ocean, the car fails. How does the EV3 actually get into a driveway here and maintain that crucial $35,000 mass market accessibility?
This is where Kia's corporate agility is being severely tested. As the dealership routing guides detail, the EV3 is slated to hit the U.S. market in early 2026.
Right.
But the regulatory landscape it is driving into is incredibly volatile.
Oh, absolutely. We are looking at the transition from the old Inflation Reduction Act policies to the new 2025 legislation, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or the OBBBA.
And looking strictly at the raw mechanics of these policies impartially, the shift to the OBBBA completely changes the incentive structure for buyers and the manufacturing calculus for automakers.
We should be clear, we aren't taking sides here, just looking at the facts and the sources. The OBBA offers a very substantial consumer benefit, a $10,000 annual car loan interest deduction.
Which is huge.
But there is a strict, unavoidable stipulation that massive financial deduction is only available to the consumer if the vehicle is assembled within the United States.
Which is a massive hurdle for foreign automakers. Under older rules, a car assembled in Mexico or Canada might have sneaked by under a North American umbrella. But the OBBBA strictly requires assembly within U.S. borders.
So if Kia builds the EV3 in their South Korean or European facilities and ships it over, the buyer loses out on that $10,000 tax deduction, which effectively destroys the vehicle's affordability.
Completely destroys it.
So how are they navigating that?
They are executing a massive strategic pivot by moving the U.S. production of the EV3 to their brand new facility in Georgia, the Hyundai Motor Group Metaplant America, or HMGMA.
But looking at the schematics of that Georgia plant, what is really clever is how they are designing the assembly lines themselves.
Oh, the flexible manufacturing.
Yes. They aren't just locking the factory into 100% EV production. They are setting it up to run hybrid vehicles, specifically the highly popular Sportage HEV, on the exact same manufacturing lines as their fully electric vehicles.
That's incredibly smart.
It makes me think of a restaurant kitchen. A traditional factory is like a kitchen that only makes sushi, and if the customers suddenly want burgers, you have to shut down, buy all new grills, and retrain the chefs. It takes weeks of downtime. But Kia has built a kitchen where the line cooks can seamlessly switch from rolling sushi to flipping burgers, depending on what the dining room orders that night, without ever closing the restaurant.
The mechanism of that flexibility is fascinating. Instead of rigid fixed tooling conveyor belts, modern plants like the one in Georgia utilize automated guided vehicles, basically robotic platforms that move the chassis around the floor.
Okay.
If a hybrid chassis rolls up, the software routes it to the combustion engine tooling stations. If an EV chassis rolls up, it goes to the high-voltage battery stations. It is software-defined manufacturing.
Which means the ultimate success of the EV3 isn't just about the car itself. It's about how fast Kia can change its factory lines to adapt to what the market actually wants.
Exactly. This dual-track manufacturing strategy perfectly insulates Kia against the very real fluctuations in EV demand. If electric vehicle adoption hits a temporary wall, they can instantly instruct the software to route more hybrid vehicles through the plant.
To keep the facility profitable.
Right. And if EV demand surges, they just pivot back. Most importantly, by ensuring strict compliance with the OBBA's U.S. assembly requirements at the Georgia plant, Kia guarantees that the EV3 remains financially protected for you, the buyer.
They have built a shock absorber against economic and political winds, ensuring that $35,000 mass market accessibility remains totally intact no matter what happens in Washington.
It's a brilliantly hedged bet that covers every single angle.
From the physics of the battery to the robotics on the factory floor. And, it brings us full circle on our mission for this deep dive.
It really does.
Today, we've journeyed from the calculated, cost-saving logic of a 400-volt battery through a cabin cooled by a radically shrunken HVAC system into the wild world of zero-waste biofabricated mushroom leather, and finally landed on the flexible factory floors of Georgia navigating modern tax laws. I want to sincerely thank you for taking the time to explore this incredibly complex web of engineering and market strategy with us today.
It is a fascinating convergence of disciplines, and it highlights just how much the automotive industry is transforming right now. And I would actually like to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day.
Let's hear it.
When you look at the totality of a vehicle like the EV3, the over-the-air software updates, the generative AI assistance, the vehicle-to-load power grid integration, the localized, bio-grown sustainable materials, the line between traditional automotive engineering and modern architecture is completely blurring.
Oh, wow.
So the question to ponder is this. When you eventually buy a vehicle with these capabilities, are you still buying a car in the traditional sense? Or are you actually buying a mobile, software-defined, eco-friendly room that just happens to be attached to a massive battery?
Man, that is a wild thing to think about the next time you were sitting in traffic staring at the steering wheel. Thanks again for joining us, and remember there is always more to unpack in our next deep dive. Catch you then.